You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Deep Space Nine Season 1 episode, The Forsaken. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this community of Trek fans to reach even more folks. I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network I'm sure you'll enjoy called The Secrets of Sacred Art, which you can find wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/art. And we're talking about The Forsaken. So, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this episode?
This week, a group of ambassadors visit the station. 3 of them are just plain annoying, and Julian gets assigned to keep them out of Sisko's hair. But the 4th is Ambassador Lwaxana Troi, and she sets her sights on Odo and starts putting the moves on him. Everyone's lives gets more complicated when an alien probe shows up from the Gamma Quadrant, and when they download its files, a computer program comes along that is lonely and wants attention. It causes a series of system failures on the station to get that attention, and because nobody in 1990s TV understands how file transfers work, they try re-uploading it to the alien probe, but this fails and causes everything to shut down. The 3 annoying alien ambassadors are trapped in a corridor with a raging fire, but Julian keeps them safe and finally earns their respect, while Odo and Lwaxana are trapped in a turbo lift as Odo is about to hit his 16-hour regeneration point and turn into a liquid. He's incredibly private about this, and he's really suffering trying to hold it together, and he tells Lwaxana that no one has ever seen him like this before. But for once, Lwaxana is kind and understanding. She graciously takes off her wig and lets him see her real hair, explaining that no one's ever seen her like this before either. This makes Odo comfortable enough with her to revert to his liquid state in front of her, and the 2 of them bond. Finally, Chief O'Brien is able to build a doghouse subroutine for the new program to keep it out of the way while letting it have the attention it wants, and everything comes back online. The end.
What'd you think of this one, Jimmy?
Well, I liked it. The annoying ambassador stuff was pretty paint by numbers, but what this episode did for me, even back when I watched it the first time on TV in the 90s, was it redeemed Lwaxana Troi, because up to this point, she had been nothing but annoying. I hated her appearances on Next Gen. I just cringed. And this was the first episode where, even though she's doing her usual cougar manhunter thing, she shows more dimensionality than that. She's able to be sympathetic and kind and humble. And this set about the redemption of her character. And that came to the forefront even more in her next appearance on Next Generation, where we learned about her deceased daughter. And that was another one that really brought more depth to her character. So I liked that.
Yeah, this kind of shows why Deep Space Nine is in so many ways better written than TNG at so many points. With the same characters, and yet there's so much more depth to them. So I agree with that. This it's a bottle show. It's all happens on station. You have out exterior shots, CGI, but it's all on station. And I really like this because it develops Odo a lot more. He's, frankly, the most interesting character in the first season. He's the shapeshifter. It's unlike any other, the Star Trek characters we've had as regulars before. And so it really dives into, who is Odo? Is he just this tough guy facade lawman, or is there more to him? And so we really get this, it's this sort of a trope of breaking through the tough exterior to the vulnerable inner man sort of thing. So there's a little bit of that trope in there, but they do such a good job with it that it doesn't feel like a trope. It doesn't feel like a cliche, which it could have been. So I really like this one. And I agree with you. The ambassador thing was kind of paint by numbers and really even just throwaway. I think it felt like a time filler. And even though the episode is ostensibly about this probe, it's really, this feels like the A plot is the Lwaxana and Odo, not what probably started as the B plot.
Yeah, in fact, I think the Forsaken is meant to be the program, which we
Yeah.
learn almost nothing about. We don't know anything about what race built this probe. We don't know why they built it. We don't know how the program got on the probe. It appears to not be native to the probe. And all that's really underdeveloped, which, for a first season episode is kind of par for the course. But what stands out is the Odo and Lwaxana interaction in this.
And as far as I know, we never hear from the program in the computer ever again. So.
No, although I did see on Memory Alpha they speculated it got wiped out when Kira ran the Cisco 197 program or whatever it was that wiped the database on the station when the Cardassians took over a few seasons later.
Oh, right, yes, that poor little puppy. So you mentioned this is the first Lwaxana Troi appearance on DS9. She has 3 total, and they each build. There's a later one. That relationship or connection with Odo builds through them, but obviously because of the Kira thing with Odo, kind of never comes to that romantic fulfillment of them being together in a relationship. But it develops into a nice friendship, and I like that connection. It seems like they're such an odd couple. They shouldn't, Odo is so repressed and it keeps his emotions close to his vest, whereas Lwaxana is all out there, and it's just an odd couple, and I like it. I like the way that works in general. O'Brien. I really liked O'Brien in this one. Like as for anyone who's ever had to struggle with a recalcitrant computer, especially now we have the days of chatbots, trying to get the darn thing to do what you want.
Yeah.
It really came home to me. I really felt for him.
Yeah, at one point, because he's dealing with this Cardassian system and it's not built to Federation specs, and he wants it to meet Federation standards. And at one point, he tells Cisco that I'm going to have to do a root canal on this, which essentially means a nuke and pave. Yeah. And he says it's going to take 2 or 3 years. And it's like, dude, we can do a nuke and pave quicker than that today.
Except you need that station to keep running while you're nuking and paving it.
You can't have it. Well, yeah, but I thought that was an excessive amount of time to just reinstall a new OS. But there are other things about it that they just don't communicate clearly about this program that infects the computer. It changes its behavior. Instead of telling him why he can't do something, it agrees to do stuff and it says it's doing stuff, but it's not working once the puppy program is on it. They compare the program to a puppy that wants attention. Right. And they try this ridiculous thing of let's try re-uploading the puppy to the probe. And it's like, guys, computer files are not physical things that you transfer from one object to another. This is not like offloading cargo. You're not if you did download the files from this thing, it still got the files up there. You didn't transfer them to the station. You just copied them to the station, and copying them back. No one in 1990s television understood how computers worked. Is all I can say.
It's the Doctor hologram problem all over again from Voyager. Yeah. They keep making this mistake, like this idea that the Doctor, if he's in the mobile emitter, if something happens to that, the Doctor is gone. It's like, or you just activate the copy that you've left on the machine. You did leave a copy. You just copied it. Yeah, that was frustrating. Even back in the 90s, people understood that you copy files. You don't literally move the bits from one place to another. Yeah.
One thing I noticed about Cisco in this episode is he basically tells everybody no. He just wants to be left alone. He doesn't want the ambassadors in his hair. He tells them no in a super diplomatic way. He's so calm and diplomatic, but basically it's buzz off. And then when Julian is complaining to him, he doesn't want Julian in his hair, so he calmly and politely tells Julian to buzz off. And then Odo complains to him about Lwaxana, and he tells Odo to buzz off. And he's just Mr. Diplomacy, calm, polite, friendly, but stay out of his hair.
The whole thing with Cisco and Bashir, felt really true to life. If I've talked, I know people who've been in the military and stuff, and it happens where the CO says to the junior officer, "Here's a really garbage duty I need you to do, and you know what you're doing because I don't want to do it, and I'm the boss, and I don't have to." Because I can give you an order, and he's just so happy. You can tell how happy Sisko is to give Bashir this job. And kind of Bashir kind of deserves it a little bit because he's kind of, he's annoying.
Kind of annoying too. Yeah,
yeah. Although it's kind of weird. Like it's the station's doctor. Like hopefully no one gets sick. While we're hurt while he's shuffling these ambassadors around, but yeah, I really felt like that felt true, and you're right. Sisko does spend all his time telling people, leave me alone. I've got work to do. You deal with it. It's kind of a little bit out of character because in other episodes, Sisko does help with things. So
yeah. Now in this, they've got 3 ambassadors. There's a woman from some race called Arbazan, which we don't really know much about, and she just complains about everything. Her quarters are too small, and you can move out of your quarters so I can take them, and all kinds of stuff like this. Then they have a Bolian guy named Valdozia who seems to primarily barb the woman ambassador a lot, and they clash a lot. He also has an interest in first contact, so when the probe comes through, he's super interested in that and wants to intrude on that. And then they have a Vulcan named Lojal, and I like the fact that they even made the Vulcan ambassador annoying. Because Vulcans, after Mr. Spock, have this reputation for being super competent, super on top of things, super helpful, and here's one who's not. He's as annoying as the other ambassadors, just in a different way.
Yeah, the what was it? Texco or Vidosia? Vidosia was the
Bolian.
The Bolian, and it was interesting that his shtick, like his annoying thing, was that he felt like he could give advice. Like he was like being an ambassador qualified him to give advice to Starfleet commanders on how to run things better, how to do their jobs better. And then yeah, there was it was funny the quirks, but it felt unrealistic to me that the turn after Julian saves them by getting them into a Jeffries tube, that's what suddenly it's no, just don't call me ambassador anymore. Call me,
Madam Ambassador.
Yeah, just call me Inara. Like, okay, that seemed a bit of a very quick switch. It was kind of odd.
Yeah. Also, with the 4th ambassador, now really we've got them off on their own plot where they're making Julian's life hell, and then we've got Lwaxana making Odo's life hell. And they're the whole excuse to bring Lwaxana on the station. We've got a group of ambassadors so we can get Lwaxana on the station, but then we're going to shunt the other 3 off on their own side plot so we can focus on Lwaxana and her relations with Odo. But frankly, all 4 of the ambassadors are super annoying. There are no ambassadors who are good in this episode.
Yeah.
And they all make people's lives hell. It's just the 3 of them are going after Julian, and Lwaxana is going after Odo. I do like her flexibility because he's trying to put her off. At one point, and they have a running gag where someone comes out of a turbo lift hoping to avoid Lwaxana, and they run into her. They did that with Picard on Next Gen and stuff, and they do it with Odo here. Yeah. And she wants to take him up to the holosuites to have a picnic, and she's got this holosuite program she wants to run for him. And he said, "Oh, but I've got to get up to Upper Pylon 3." And so she gets in the elevator. "Oh, I've always wanted to see an upper pylon." Transparent lie. Right. And they start going up in the elevator, and then the elevator, and she starts talking, "Oh, I'll just have one of Quark's minions bring up the picnic basket, and we can have our picnic up on the upper pylon." And then they get stuck And she keeps being flexible. She won't take no for an answer from him. She'll just propose something new that they can do in the current situation. And she verifies we're not in any real danger, are we? And he says,
Yeah.
no, not as long as we don't panic. And so she's fine. She's, she just, oh, it's a chance to get to know each other now that we're stuck in this elevator together. And he explains to her that he is not like, I'm not like you. I don't, this is not a real mouth. I don't have an esophagus. I don't have a stomach. I do not eat. I turn into a liquid every 16 hours, which is our setup for what's going to happen later. But I love her reaction when he says, I turn into a liquid every 16 hours. She says, I can swim. Yeah.
There's some good lines when the turbolift stops and he contacts ops, and it'll be a while before he can get you out. And Cisco warns him, don't try to shapeshift your way out. Oh, yeah. Right, because there's exposed circuits in the walls there. He would get electrocuted, and so later on they're getting to know each other, quote unquote, and
Lwaxana's doing all the talking,
prattling on and on and on. And he's got this look in his face, and she's like, "What? Oh, what's wrong, Odo? Oh, I was just wondering how many volts are in that exposed circuit."
Yeah.
Like, maybe I could survive to get away from. He's contemplating, risking death to get away from this. Yeah. Like, he's the classic introvert in the sense of and she's like the most extroverted person ever. And it's like, I would claw my eyes out to get away from this situation if I actually had eyes. So yeah, I thought it was a really nicely, like, these scenes with them are really nicely written. There's some good stuff in them.
And she starts to draw out. I mean, at one point, we keep cutting back and forth between them. And at one point we cut to them and she's obviously been talking a lot. And she says, so enough about me. And he doesn't pick up on the cue. That's your cue to tell me about you now.
Yeah.
And so she starts drawing him out, and we get more backstory of Odo than we've had, because this is a first season episode. Mm-hmm. They don't mention that in this one that his name means unknown sample, but they do mention that he had a scientist assigned to study him. And he talks about how his hair is an imitation of that scientist's hair, which is really interesting because they have, Lwaxana wears several wigs in this episode. Mm-hmm. She changes wigs, and she talks about, oh yeah, I always use that brooch with this hair and stuff. So it's on the table that she's wearing these wigs. And he says that his hair, because she's asking about it, is real in the sense that it's part of me, but it's not real hair. It's not like your hair. And she says, how did you manage to do it? And he said, with a lot of practice. And she said, you studied hairstyles? Yeah. That's something she knows about. Point of commonality. It's like, no, I just imitated the scientist who was assigned to study me. And he talks about how, she picks up on his loneliness and how he had this lonely early experience after they found him and they treated him as a research subject. And they didn't even initially, they don't go into this, but they didn't even initially know he was intelligent. And so he had this very lonely life growing up in a lab. And he talks about how he learned to cope. He said, I discovered I could be entertaining. I could be the life of the party. Odo, be a chair. I'm a chair. Odo, be a razor cat. I'm a razor cat. And he said, I could be the life of the party. I hate parties. and I sympathize with that so much because I hate parties too.
Yes.
Parties are not my thing. If I have a role to perform, like answer questions, Jimmy, or call a dance, Jimmy, or something like that, I can do that. But if it's stand around and mingle at a party, it is, fingernails on the chalkboard to me. I can't wait to escape from those.
Small talk.
Yeah. So, especially, I mean, if it's people I don't know, if it's someone I know, it's not really a party. It's just hanging out with a friend. But I totally sympathized with his I hate parties. But then I liked what Lwaxana did, which was saying, you've just been at the wrong parties. I'll throw a party for you and all the guests will be there to entertain you. And, I don't know how that would work, but right. I appreciate her sentiment.
It comes down to it, underneath all of that,
Bluster.
And yeah, Lwaxana always comes across as a nice, especially after the first couple appearances on TNG.
Mm-hmm.
She eventually comes across as this nice person who has this facade that they wear, this mask that they wear to the world, and we get that, as you mentioned, in that episode, in the later episode in TNG, when we find out why Lwaxana is the way she is, because of this loss early in her life, or earlier, and it's like, I don't know. This is the episode where Lwaxana becomes a person, a nice, like you mentioned, a nice person. I appreciate they did that to Majel Barrett.
Yeah. And after all the bluster and all the manhunting and everything, finally when she realizes Odo is about to lose it and turn into a liquid, and he's so humiliated because no one has ever seen him like this before. And she takes off her wig and lets him see her with her real hair. And she says, no one's ever seen me like this before either. I wear the wig I wear wigs constantly. And he says, but your hair looks nice. And she says, it looks ordinary. Mm-hmm. And ordinary is one thing I've never wanted to be. And that self-humiliation, because that's what that is. She's humiliating herself to make him feel comfortable and able to revert to his liquid form in front of somebody.
Right. And into that super vulnerable moment. I mean, Odo is never more vulnerable than when he's, regenerating in that liquid form. So yeah, it creates a bond between them.
Yeah. When he does revert to liquid, he goes into the folds of her dress. So she's holding him in her lap, basically.
Exactly. Right.
And she just tells him, let go, I'll take care of you.
Right. Which is, in that moment, it's more of a motherly, feeling I get from her, maternal, than it is, romantic, which is nice, because we were introduced to her as a mom. She is Deanna's mom. And so that's kind of something nice about that maternal aspect of Lwaxana as well. It is fun how completely lacking in any romantic sense Odo is. I mean, he is like a monomaniac about his role, who he is. He's
a workaholic.
His identity is, I am the lawman. Like he's like literally the law. He's like the personification of the law on the station. And having to again, over time, Odo becomes more than that. And this is one of those moments where he's starting to be pushed. But it is funny to see how completely inept about anything romantic he is, and how she puts him on his back foot at every turn. And which is what she did to Picard, in TNG. It's one of the things that makes, Lwaxana, was kind of fun in relation to other characters for me, is how she always put these super confident characters on their back foot, so it's fun.
I know that's what they were going for, but I didn't like it until this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Picard stuff, I wasn't a fan of, especially her going on about Picard's alleged lascivious thoughts about her. It's like, I don't think he's really having those. I think you're making that up.
Right. And I think they were using that, sort of her making that up about Picard, as a way to, to do this, sort of putting him on his back foot. But yeah, you're right. It's not, it feels unseemly, that she's lying about Picard having lascivious thoughts, because Picard is so buttoned up and, very proper, and can't just call her out and tell her she's lying, that sort of thing. It's funny because it's DS9 did with Lwaxana kind of what they did with Q, which is undo, like, Picard never punched me in the nose when when Cisco punches Q. It's like, yeah, because this is a different kind of station, different show, and I like that.
I do like that. So we see Odo's, obliviousness and ineptness in romantic situations in this, and they keep that in the future when his relationship with Kira finally starts to develop. He is inept and clueless in his relationship with Kira, and it takes Vic Fontaine to force him into admitting his feelings for her. And finally, they actually do it off screen, but he and Kira, as we're in the Dominion War, have a conversation in Jadzia Dax's closet where they sort out their mutual issues.
Yeah.
And so it's a nice arc for them. And I know that the actors, Nana Visitor and Renee Auberjonois, were not fans of them being put in a relationship, but I think it really works.
I agree. Yeah.
Also, Marina Sirtis was not a fan of being in a relationship with Worf at the very end of Next Gen, but that totally worked. That was a Beauty and the Beast relationship. That totally worked. And so I think actors sometimes don't have the best insight into what relationships are going to work for the audience.
Especially in Picard, when Riker and Troi are back together, there was a couple fun moments related to Worf in that. Yeah, that was fun. And when you mention how the later seasons of DS9, it just emphasizes how well written DS9 was and how even better it got, because that scene where Kira and Odo resolve everything is, like you said, it's off screen. Like a lesser show would have had us see the back and forth, but we don't need that. We just, what we need is the resolution in that moment. And that was, sometimes less is more. And that was a great instance of it. I also love that Vic was such a good catalyst for the characters. Vic Fontaine, an interesting out of the blue character who just became a great catalyst for so many good stories. One of the funny lines was Bashir calls the ambassadors, they are the ambassadors of unhappy.
Yeah.
Like, what I was kind of wondering, what are they doing there? Is this sort of just like a fact-finding mission from these planets?
Well, that's what we're told. We're told it's a fact-finding mission involving the wormhole. And so we don't really see their fact-finding mission very much. I mean, they come up to Ops, they see the wormhole open and close, and the Bolian guy says, "That's it? I thought it would be more."
Yeah.
And then the probe comes through the wormhole, and okay, that would be something they're here to study. And the Bolian again tries to intrude himself on that, but not Picard, Sisko deftly steps in and says, because he says, I think at least one of the ambassadors should be involved in this probe situation, and as I have a special interest in first contact situations, I recommend myself. And Sisko says, and that's exactly why I'm scheduling a briefing for y'all at 4 o'clock, 400 or something. And so apparently they did have things to do. We just didn't end up seeing them. But I thought that was lacking as well. I thought we should have seen a little more of what they were there to fact find about.
I did love the fact that Sisko scheduled it at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's awesome. But yeah, I mean, the whole ambassador thing, I mean, in Star Trek, the ambassadors are kind of, it's such an amorphous concept. Are they ambassadors of the Federation? Are they ambassadors from their individual planets? What is their connection to the Federation and Starfleet? It's sort of very amorphous. And
well, I assume this was sent from Starfleet. Actually, no, I should rephrase that. I assume they were sent from the Federation Council. And it doesn't, make it's reasonable because, okay, so the Federation Council is the government that Starfleet reports to. Starfleet has this base at this faraway planet, Bajor, and now there's a stable wormhole there connecting it to the Delta Quadrant or Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah.
And we're going to have all this new contact with species from the Gamma Quadrant. It makes all the sense in the world for the Federation Council to send some ambassadors there to look at the situation and figure out what's going on. Even though it's a military station, the civilian government needs to be informed about, so what's the military doing here? We have civilian oversight of the military. This would be logical civilian oversight to exercise, find out what they're doing with these other races and make sure they're doing it right, including first contacts.
Right. Yeah. In fact, it's kind of interesting if I were to try to be more realistic about it. Yeah, I would think the Federation
would have a permanent attaché.
Exactly. Would have some, like an ambassador, a chargé d'affaires or, ambassador with a portfolio who's there just to receive from there. Although it's tricky because the station is really Bajor, and Bajor isn't a Federation member, so I suppose that could be tricky. But nevertheless, it is what it is. They and what they did send was these. Hopefully not all Federation ambassadors are like this group of 4, but
ambassadors and admirals tend to be a tricky bunch on Star Trek.
Yeah. By the way, the ambassador the actor who plays Vadoja, the Bullion, also plays an admiral several times in Star Trek, so he does a good job of that apparently. It was interesting, the scene where they were trying to get the entity out of the computer by distracting it with a half a dozen requests that I look at it and go, that shouldn't really tax a 24th century computer all that much. I mean, they were decent jobs, but this is a system running the entire station. It didn't seem like this should be all that taxing to it, but drama. It is fun to watch the system drag to a halt. So, any other notes about this episode, Jimmy?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, it was the A plot was really Odo and Lwaxana, and then there was these B plots to kind of support that story, and that was about it. So, I think of it as this is a pretty good first season episode as far as first season DS9 goes. So, that's my overall.
It's something I wouldn't necessarily rewatch, regularly, but then I don't rewatch first season DS9 regularly anyway. It hadn't gotten good yet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's decent. It's just not. Oh, there's much better DS9 coming.
It's not the best part of DS9, that's for sure. All right, so now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Peter B, Michelle, Rodney B, Evan S, and Father Darrell M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This StarQuest show is also brought to you by Exodus 90 and the Exodus 90 Challenge, which begins this year on January 20th. This isn't just a 90-day program. Exodus 90 is a spirituality for men in modern times, built on 3 ancient pillars: prayer, self-sacrifice, and fraternity. We all long for something more, and that something is to be found in becoming the men that God created us to be, sons of a loving Father. It's time to turn away from our idols. It's time to break free from the pharaohs that hold us in bondage. If you're ready to make a fresh start, to break free, refocus, and rediscover who God is calling you to be in the new year, and embark on a journey to uncommon freedom in Jesus Christ, then download the Exodus 90 app today. We start January 20th, 2025, so go to exodus90.com/SQPN to learn more about Exodus 90. That's exodus90.com/SQPN. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. What did you think of the DS9 episode, The Forsaken? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch us on the Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where hit the bell, subscribe, and do all those things. That helps us get the show out to even more folks. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Voyager episode, The Raven. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Oh, those space hippies are going to get Borkified. Live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, when it comes to picnics, the only thing that really matters is the company.